I entered through that portal there after a steep hike up a very beautiful park-like environment on the hillside that probably were it higher would have a view of Innsbruck, and maybe it does from inside these buildings. If my memory serves me correctly, this was built because the old codger who was king at the time and his young girl, wife or mistress, annoyed that he had to negotiate with his bad feet or legs or hips or whatever through the riffraff, the populace in the town of Innsbruck. So he decided to build this colossal place for himself. Colossal in terms of the whole land area, which is not colossal but very large. A ticket, so we'll go through the museum first. This is what I'm most interested in seeing. This is where people of this stature in those days, 18th century, 19th century early, collected all kinds of novelties from all over the world. This is the Amory. I assume this is for a young man, but what a curious and obvious protuberance in the most obvious of places. Now, I'm not sure that this had anything to do with the man who built this, unless in his younger days he was athletic. My guess is that every mucky-muck had an armorer room to imply that this was the realm he lived in and functioned in and succeeded in. But in fact, it may well be just a trophy room of collections, if you will. It is that now. These are kind of good displays because you literally see how they sat their horse, etc. Although probably the movies do a very fine job of it nowadays. Like giving young girls their dolls, they apparently gave young men their suit of armor. I suppose we could spend considerable time looking for nuances of difference, but actually I think almost all these are the same. Whether these are original, I don't know. They look pretty darn new, so don't look very thick. Those things may be cup holders. Oh no, those were probably for holding the lance. Thought they just held it. How wimpy is that? This armor was made for the man's wedding, and I can appreciate having a set of armor for your wedding. What you're about to embark on will be one of the great battles of your life. Gives an idea though of how much show is involved. There's that, I'm guessing that disc right there, notice it sticks out. Probably in the end of the lance there was an indentation that would ride right on that knob to give even more support. With all due respect to these guys, I wouldn't want to do what they did, that's for sure. An interesting nuance. Presumably he'll take the brunt of most lances right in his left shoulder. But this looks like it would hold a pointy lance and cause tremendous torque on his body. They're actually Turkish carpets that were made out of leather. I haven't seen anything like that before. Presumably these are designs of the same, unless there were smaller versions or something. Responded with the Turkish fashion, much loved in the 16th century, that's 1500s. An interplay of fear and admiration of the Oriental styled objects. I wonder how close this was to Sobieski's great battle at Vienna siege. It was 1556, when Ferdinand himself led a military expansion campaign against the Turks in Hungary. They're interesting shields, they almost are counterintuitive in the sense that instead of protecting the upper body thoroughly, they protect the lower body, probably to give the man far more flexibility with his right arm. I wonder if they had left-handed shields. Boy, those things would do some number on you, wouldn't they? Look at the blades that are on the end of it, as well as the long stilettos, almost hatchet-like. Wow. We even walked away from these things, these battles. It would be incredible. Probably some kind of a curiosity, but I have no idea what it is. It's reminiscent of what you pull out of the ground when lightning strikes and turns whatever it went through in the way of sand into some kind of glassy rock. The honeycomb on bronze, on plaster, whatever that means. I don't know, except that is the outlook of a skull. These are some further examples of what we just saw. 14 karat gold. Whether that's plated or in total, I don't know. But it's entitled Klondike in 2011, and I think this is art. These panels may just portray some of the kinds of items that might be held in this chamber of curiosities. Musical instruments, old clocks. It was divided into 5 categories. The ones I can remember would be natural, unnatural, man-made curiosities. Natural might be divided further into marine, bird-like things, animals, plants. Fascinating concept. The beginning, if you will, of modern museums. There's more, actually, of items to see. This is art, 2007. The important thing I almost missed is to look at the ceiling that he had painted. There, perhaps, being 2 gladiators? Or is that St. John's head? Who knows? There in the bottom, a centaur spearing looks like a lion type thing. Another man entrapped by a snake. What all this means, I don't know, but that does look original. Hopefully we enter on the second floor. On the second floor of this building, which was to our right when we entered to our left. I'll pan about so you can see what it looked like from here. And presumably this was the room. Now the earlier pictures you see, a room is absolutely cluttered, jammed full of curiosities. Here things, if these are original, are spread out. Niches appear to be just filled with statues or busts of people, perhaps important in the time historically, like Maximilian's black men, which also included women, and perhaps people who were famous at the time, but otherwise nondescript and unlabeled. A snake, or a lizard, which another dragon or lizard was about to consume. Theoretically, is still quivering. What the point of this is, I don't really know. Actually called a jiggle box. And it's unique in the 16th century. Extraordinary object, so this was a legitimate object in the 16th century. These are like some little toys that you can still buy. They have disjointed, articulated parts to them, like that leg and the head of this tortoise, and they were attached with strings apparently to the box. So if you hit the box, jiggled it, you caused everything inside to jiggle. There you go, jiggle box. This illustrates death by bow and arrow. How old it is, I don't know. 1520. Looks very museum-like, not at all the clutter I expected, which is far more fascinating than this. This looks actually quite ordinary for a museum. The variety might be much greater depending upon the inclination and of the owner and the skills of those who could procure stuff. The preoccupation with beautiful little intricate things like this, then he would have lots of them. Fortunately, the reflections are so great in these rooms that you can't really see much. But look at the intricacy of that. Or was it just for its own aesthetic beauty that it was prized? At first glance, looks like an undersea coral box, and yet I think there is coral in there, but as you can see, there's a Christ on the cross, where else, and others beneath him. Again, we might just as easily expect to see this in a modern museum as here. So this is a curiosity. This was a folding chair. It was designed so it could be folded. But more importantly, it was designed to trap in it the person who was sitting there, and they would not be allowed until they had consumed a sufficient amount of wine. And there is some hints on the back of this concept of Bacchus. I think I saw what might allude to grapes.
Looks like a Swiss Army.
Here, perhaps a forerunner of the Swiss Army knife. Very condition known as hypertrichosis plagued a man who was kept here at Ambras Castle throughout his life, and it's been diagnosed apparently by 1993. Here's some different kinds of shoes, a boot, but notice how the toes are articulated, kind of like that new shoe that people for a while like, and talk about platform shoes. And here a shoe, it looks like it has a hook thing on the front, maybe style, and there something like sandals, but what strange design. It's in quivers, probably from some foreign exotic country of the time. Stirrups. Fans. Don't know whether that's art or a curiosity. They articulate deformed people or people who had suffered that man. Kind of elaborate game set. I mean, what did you do when you were at court? You didn't have squat to do except eat. Rifles. Whether you could hit a damn thing with them or not wasn't important as much as the incredible workmanship of such a weapon. Almost a pistol. Variations on a theme. This looks oriental, like Japanese. Suppose I could look and see. It's a samurai. Seeing how the samurai wore these woven. Notice the sections, overlapping sections. Just squares. Interesting. Interesting helmet. You wonder how it was used as a weapon, if it was. Sundry swords. But an interesting handle, if in fact that's what it is. A large tapestry, probably illustrating battles won or thought to have been won or hoped everyone would believe were won. Not only because they're a depiction of history written by the people who won. Mildly interesting to wonder where these columns came from. They look very, very old. Older than most everything else here. Look at the wonderment in that kid's. Not that bird's first rodeo. Pretty little fountain.